Welcome back to Story Deep Dive with Dana and Rachel. We are back with our first discussion around this month's pick. But before we get into that, just in case you're new around here, we are two book coaches, editors, and besties. And we talk about books and not as readers, even though that gets splashed in there too, but really about it as writers and drawing inspiration from great books and a lot of laughs and a whole bunch of shenanigans. But we have a great time just digging into these books and pulling out some of the gems that can help you write the story that you've always wanted to write and tell the stories that you wanted to tell. And so we're going to be talking about The Woman in the Library by
Sulari Gentill.
Y'all need Rachel's help because y'all be tearing that name up. And this is a great murder mystery. And before we get into all of that and sort of get our feet wet in this overview, Rachel, what do you have going on over there at Story Cipher?
So many things.
Oh, come on.
First, so this is the first episode of this series, and I feel like I'm kind of like back in my zone for the first time in like a little bit. And there's so many great things happening. First of all, it's October, and we're reading a daggone murder mystery, and my little vampire heart is just coming alive. Like, I feel like I just like hide indoors in the air conditioning during the summer, but when the cold weather comes around, that's my pale butt is ready to get outdoors in the cold. I'm so excited. So it's...
Why is she so dramatic? Why is she so dramatic? Oh my God. It was like she was chomping at the bit for me to ask that question.
I have been, let me tell you, when like 3 weeks ago, when I knew we were going to be recording this podcast at some point, I was like, oh, this is our October episode, which means, number one, I wear my October reader shirt, which it's like on the image or on the shirt, there's like a book and a skeleton hand holding a book and a snake, and it says the Undead Readers Club. And so it's like, it's my like Halloween season book shirt. And I got my freaking pumpkin mug.
Come on.
Everything. It's just, I'm like, oh, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
It's like all the words.
Yes. I planned this like 3 weeks ago. I was like, I know what shirt I need to wear. I need to have my pumpkin mug. Like I'm ready. So I'm very excited to be doing this book and to be in October, even though it's like still hot in Alabama because it's going to be hot for like a minute. We're getting away from like it's about to stop being hot, but early October, we're still working our way out of hot. So we're a work in progress down here. But more relevantly, literally tomorrow, so this is coming out October 5th, and on October 6th, I am speaking at Pro Writing Aid's Preptober. They reached out to me to do a session with them. And my session is going to be about sort of what to expect from your first draft and how to plan for it to sort of maximize your chance for success when you are specifically writing on a tight deadline, like I'm going to write a whole novel in a month. Because when you are, so there's a couple of things, right, that like writers I think should know and be informed when they're going into writing, especially if you're doing this for the first time. And the first thing is that your first draft is never what you want it to be. It's like you are laying groundwork for yourself and setting those expectations so that when you start writing and you're like, that's not the thing I pictured in my head, it doesn't hang you up and you're not discouraged by it, but you're able to actually keep moving. So setting expectations about what a first draft is for, what to expect from it, and how to sort of like embrace the first draft to get the most that you can out of it and also finish on the deadline that you've set for yourself. Or, if you're writing to deadline for something else, hit your deadline. And then how to outline for that stage in the process, like how to outline for the fact that this is a first draft, not a third draft. And so what is that bare minimum information that you want, how to kind of plan for that accordingly so that you also don't get stuck in the planning process. because I work with a lot of wonderful perfectionists who are like, I gotta know everything, right? And I'm like, no, you won't know everything. You will know a bunch more after your first draft, and that's very uncomfortable, but it is a fact, and just really helping to kind of lay out those expectations and help set people up for success if they want to write a novel in a month, and understand what kind of planning they can do to enable themselves without putting so much pressure on the planning that they have to know the whole thing. So that's what my whole session is going to kind of center on. It's quite wonderful. It pairs really well with your session about the plot accordion, which I just thought was so fabulous.
It does. It really does. You were listening. I was like, oh my God, those pair so well together.
We're on just surprised. Like a telepathic wavelength.
Come on.
What about you? What you got going on over there?
Yeah, listen, every time we record these, you know how it goes. It's the fact of thinking, okay, what do I want to talk about? But let me tell you, coming up this week, I think one of these days, y'all don't know which days, one of these days, I'm going to the Quilt Festival, the International Quilt Festival in Houston. Let me tell you something, just in case you did not know, I'm a quilter. And across my hall, literally, I have a whole quilting studio. I love to quilt. I go over and quilt 10 or 15 minutes a day or so. Piecing together. I remember when my son was younger, he used to say, so let me get this right. You buy fabric, you cut it all up just to sew it back together. Yes, that's exactly what
you got it. Isn't it great?
Baby, he could not wrap his head around that for the life of him. But you know what? They know it's my happy place. So I've gone like many years. It's a huge deal. People come from all around the world. I remember last year I met someone from Australia. Like they come in and people do trips to come here because you get this whole experience with like hundreds of classes, and then they have the whole like floor of the George R. Brown Center, which is one of our huge convention centers here in Houston, that is full of every sort of vendor, sewing machine manufacturers, long arm machine that you can see and use, and you get to use them in the classrooms. Like it's such a wonderful, like hands-on, tactile sort of experience. I am taking classes to do hand sewing because I am going to work on a quilt where I sew the whole thing by hand, which is insane. I think, who is she? Because if you would have told me this when I first started, I would have been lies you tell. Okay, lies you tell. And I found this lady, and I'm taking 2 of her classes. She was like, you're in both the classes. I sure am. I'm in both the classes. Give me both of my kits, and I'm going to be right there.
I'm dedicated.
Listen, I found that when I am super busy, like now, and I'm writing around the clock, every time I'm not with a client or reviewing a manuscript, I am writing, that doing something with my hands and sort of relaxing my brain is just such a great way to still be creative. And it helps me to think and process. And it's just so much fun. So I usually say that I go there with it's a lot of older people. I'm usually one of the very younger ones. And listen, my daughter's always
hanging
said
out with my crowd out there somewhere.
Okay, your people. She always used to call it my old lady hobby. And it is, but let me tell you, who be in there front and center? I don't care. So I'm looking forward to it. And it makes me kind of piggyback on something else that has really been coming up for me here lately, of just like, as writers and as editors, like how much time we spend at our desk at a computer, and how important it is to get up, move your body, move around, find something that you love. And I think finding another creative outlet is so helpful, because there's something about once your mind relaxes and you sort of stop focusing on a problem or a plot that you're working on, that it will become so clear. Yeah. And so I used to keep a notebook by me. Now I just record it as a memo into my phone, or I can just listen to an audiobook and sew. And it's just something that just makes life really well-rounded. So whether it's a hobby, or I like to walk, we walk daily, or you like to run or do exercise or whatever, finding some outlets, because we can spend an entire lifetime sitting in these chairs, and it's not a good look, right?
Yeah.
And so that's going to be listen, I'm going to be living my best life. Do you hear me?
Good. Well, okay, just like a couple thoughts on this. Number one, I am so glad for you, because I know that you have been hauling butt over there, to get, I mean, the back-to-back deadlines with the writing. You're already a busy lady. Like, there's never a time that I've, like, known you and you've not been, like, you know, had 50 different things going on. And then there are these moments in time where, like, all of a sudden there's 50 more things going on all at once.
That it just comes out of nowhere, but I know it's not, but it feels like it.
Yes, and like all of a sudden, like you and I will be, you know, meeting every week or, you know, talking on Marco Polo, and then all of a sudden, like, and just things are just like normal as far as I can tell, and then all of a sudden, you're like, I have 50 deadlines right now. And it's like, you know, and then it's like, I'm just occasionally texting like, are you okay? And you're like, yeah, I'm just busy. Like, you know,
Girl.
and it's like, but it just like all of a sudden it just like comes upon you. So for you to be able, because that's where you've been for like weeks now, for you to be able to like go to the quilt festival and like, and just like, just let go, like let some of that stuff just kind of go. And especially to go to the quilt festival, because it's not like, because you've traveled this year for coaching stuff, for more informational stuff, where your brain is like, yes, you're away from your desk, but you're getting like crammed more stuff in your brain. And for this to be able to be, I'm leaving everything behind for a little bit, and I'm going to enjoy this craft, this hobby, this thing that I do with my hands, and to just like be able to embrace that for a little bit, like, and to just let everything else be. I am very, very excited for you, because I know you've been just haul and tail over there. And I just want to say, like, you're right as well, that like when you work in a creative field, but also if you're in knowledge work, right, and you're just freaking at your desk hour after hour after hour, having things to do that move, just like you said, move your body, like, because we can get so, like, we can turn into like floating brains, right, where it's like our body is just a thing that carries our brain from place to place, right? I think that was Mike Birbiglia who said that, but where we turn into, like, it's like all we are is a brain and not a body, and engaging our like physically engaging our bodies and things to like keep us fresh and like to make us feel a little more human, and not just like a brain that's working all the time, is really, really important. And getting away from your desk and looking at trees, taking a walk, touching grass, as the kids say, you know, just I'm glad, you know, I've known for as long as I've known you, right, you've had those things in your life, and it has, you know, helped me to prioritize those things as well, to be like, oh, right, like, maybe don't sit at your desk for like all the 12 hours of your day. Maybe take a second to go. Like...
And it's never the plan, but it happens. And you know what? And what floats to my mind is like, there's never a right time to do it. You just got to just be like, I'm doing it, and everything else just has to fold accordingly, which is why the deadlines come up, because when I go, I'm going. I'm going out. Listen, halfway, I don't halfway even talk to people. Y'all know I don't have to talk to people, and I will be in my happy place. Listen, I could be the bag lady, got all my quilt stuff, got my rolling bag. Listen, you are not going to tell me I won't be in my bag. So, yes, I just feel like, you know, sometimes we do it and we don't realize, and time passes anyway. And having something that brings you joy is always going to add to your life. And I just am always extremely prayerful, like, Lord, just make time do what it does, because that's the only way. And it will, and it does. And then I'm always sort of rewarded with something, whether it's clarity or think of another idea, or just having enough time to like depressurize and then jump in refreshed. So yes. So basically your girl is ready. I'm getting my old lady hobby on. Okay.
Hell yeah. We love the old lady hobby. Yes, ma'am.
You and that salute on the top of your forehead.
I know.
It like,
it borders on like a top hat, like one of these, more than it's even a salute.
Rachel, you are insane.
Considering that you are, like, no one else, I don't know if anybody else thinks about it because you're ex-military. You clocked that immediatay. You're like, that's not, what is that?
Rachel, what is this? What is this all the way up here, ma'am? Just keep it. Just keep it. And you love doing it, baby. Just keep it. Because it's all the way up here.
Tapping and
Right.
Wait, I can't do it. Oh no. All right, we should move on before I embarrass myself further. What are we talking about today, Taylor?
Oh my gosh. Other than her and her shenanigans, we are jumping into this first episode about the woman in the library. If you did not know, this is a Rachel's pick, and we're going to even talk a little bit about that as far as my experience with reading this story. If you're new here, you don't know, but we record these in a very insane sort of progression, and I can already tell you, because we've recorded the other episodes, you are in for a treat. I think this is a really great episodes, and this is a great story. And so we're going to get into the nitty gritty, but before we get into our overview of the woman in the library, Rachel is going to share a summary.
Yes, I am. Here I go.
What is that? What is that?
This is our last episode of the day, and it makes me double silly.
Somebody come get your girl, please. Would you come get
Trevor,
her?
come get your wife, please. She's out of control.
Look, take her and then bring her back, because we love her. But you know.
Thank you. All right, let me give you that summary, everybody. In The Woman in the Library, four strangers are united by a single moment, a single scream, while sitting next to each other in the Boston Public Library. What follows is an amateur sleuth investigation among four friends: tatted psychology student Marigold, Harvard law kid Whit, dashing author Kane, and our protagonist Freddie, a writer on fellowship working on her debut novel. But as this new friendship unfolds, so too do secrets, and the biggest one of them might just be a killer.
So with that said, Rachel, let us know the couple of things that you would like to go over or sort of explore in this overview to set us up for the woman in the library. And I will do the same before we dive into this discussion.
Yeah, so there's two main things that I want to hit to help frame the rest of the episodes and what we're going to be talking about. So the first is going to be sort of like what I'm calling the crime continuum. It's just the spectrum of types of crime stories and how to kind of understand the spread of those and where this falls on that continuum. And then I also want to talk about this story has a framing story, or like a narrative, like an overt narrative device that it uses to frame the story, and it's very cleverly done. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and how she uses it as well. What about you?
I want to talk a little bit. We know you want me to talk a little bit about my experience, because this was my first time reading a story like this. I can't think of any. I mean, I've done cozy. I love a good suspense or a thriller, but I haven't had one that sort of falls in between there. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I really enjoyed the pacing of this book, and we don't talk about that a lot, but it's something that I enjoyed. It's something that I could read over time and even between other books, and it was distinctive enough that it sort of held its own in a great way. Another thing that we will talk about repeatedly across these episodes is the sort of usage of secrets and withholding information. It plays a big part in how this plot unfolds, and also the interaction and engagement between the characters. And finally, just lightly, I just really love the way she's handled this cast. So just talking about the characters just a little bit. And so I have a feeling a lot of my elements are going to slide into each other, but I think they're going to do a great job of setting up some of the high points for me when it comes to reading this book. So go ahead and tell us about that continuum and sort of where we are when we talk about this particular novel, The Woman in the Library.
Yes, and that's actually really nice, because I think it'll like pair perfectly with you sort of talking about your experience of this type of story for the first time. So when I think about crime stories as a whole, or even almost more broadly mysteries, although mystery can encompass quite a lot more than just crime. When I think about crime stories as a whole, I think about them as sort of existing on this continuum. If you're listening to this podcast, I apologize, because I'm gesturing with my hands, so I'll do my best to sort of explain.
Like a touchdown.
Yeah, right. Yes, so you've got one hand on each side, right? You think of it as a spectrum or a continuum. And on the far left side, well, at least my left, Jeez. So, on the far side, you have a crime story, like what I think of as like a straight crime story. So we're thinking about The Whistleblower, which we read on this podcast. We're thinking about Michael Connelly. We are thinking about, oh gosh, I just lost his name. Oh Lord. Well, we're thinking about Stieg Larsson with the girl with the dragon tattoo. And I'm blanking on one of the other big players. At any rate, but these are, right, we're thinking about, crime stories that they center usually on a murder, and you have a protagonist, more often than not a protagonist in some sort of law, like, connected profession. So they're a journalist, they're a lawyer, they're a police officer, they're detective, that kind of thing. And they tend to be grittier. They tend to deal more with the fallout of murder. So they can be graphic. They're not always graphic, but they will deal with sort of the emotional fallout, the societal fallout that centers on murder. So they're heavier stories. Even though they're still very much about chasing down a criminal and who did it and why did they do it, they will tend to get into the grittier details of that particular, of what that all means and what it looks like. And again, like the emotional impacts and the societal impacts. So that's crime sort of on your far left side. On the far opposite side, you have a cozy mystery. And a cozy mystery is much lighter touch. A lot of times still features a murder, but it's not gruesome. And we're not thinking too hard about the fact that someone lost their life. We're really looking for the puzzle, and we are just focused on really the fun of the investigation. And they tend to be, a lot of times they can be a little bit more comedic. You're more likely to have your amateur sleuth because they have that kind of level of removal from the crime. Again, as we're looking at like the gritty details of the crime. And a lot of times you'll see like it'll be like a specialist of some kind, like as in a baker, someone who does home renovation. I've recently seen several that feature like witches, and they have all kinds of different types of jobs that they do, but they're like a witch. And so, right, they're very lighthearted, and again, it's all about our cast of characters and the puzzle itself more than it is about anything gruesome or gritty about murder. So these are kind of on your far opposite sides of the spectrum. And in the middle is your classic murder mystery, which really does fall right in between both. So it does feature a murder, and it sometimes can deal with more of the societal or emotional aspects, but it's never as gruesome. Like it's not gruesome like a crime novel, like just a straight crime novel could be. You may have an amateur sleuth, or you might have a professional private detective. You'll see a lot of private detectives in your murder mystery category there. And so that's why, it can kind of include some of these societal aspects, and it can be a bit more on the serious side without being gruesome, which is how it kind of winds up right in between our crime and our cozy. And I would position The Woman in the Library squarely in murder mystery, although it's, because it's about books and writers, some of it has a little bit of that cozy feel, without, I think, going full tilt onto the cozy side. So that's kind of how I think about crime novels. And I think knowing where your novel is, because that helps you understand what the expectations are, and also a little bit of like what the, if you're writing a cozy mystery, probably don't describe a gruesome disembowelment or something like that. It might work, but probably your audience who was looking for a cozy will not be pleased. So understanding where you fall so that you know kind of what your bounds are, and what's sort of expected from you if you're going to position your book in that way, is really helpful, because you've mentioned this before and it drives me nuts. murder mysteries, cozies, suspense, thriller, crime, like they're all just like lumped together in a single category in your bookstore, on Amazon, online, like they all just get lumped under one big category, but they're very, very different and across that spectrum. So that's sort of where I position this book and how I think about that continuum.
Which makes me bring in like what my experience was. Whether it has been, I think the last big thriller I read was the 6 o'clock man. I think it was
620 or something.
Yeah, 620.
Yeah.
Who was it?
David Baldacci.
Thank you. And so I can go in that pocket. I've read plenty of cozies, but I don't think I've read a story like this. And so as I was reading it, it did give me a cozy feel, but it didn't give you the environment that cozy will normally give you. That it kind of does feel like you're sort of having this extension of the almost like a found family sort of vibe, and it does have a lighter sort of tilt. I think this story felt that way a little bit because of the framing of the fact that it was the book in the book aspect, and it was about writers, and it sort of made it a little bit interesting. But it also was something that I was like, oh, that was a very interesting choice, but it did well for the progression of the story. I found that I really loved the pacing. I loved the writing style, and I did like the way that she sort of set the story up, and sort of having those sort of parallel storylines that run into each other. And it helped me to start getting some little tip-offs and understanding of what was going on, because I know mysteries and crime enough to pick out elements, but it's not something that I look for often. I wouldn't say that this would be something that I would just reach for. Listen, I've been wanting to know who it is right now. Don't give me the puzzle. I don't need mental gymnastics. My brain is tired enough. Just tell me which one is it. That's what I wanted. And but another part of it that I found that was a kind of a little bit of a bonus, because again, my life is the way that it is. It was a great book to read over time. To just read a chapter at a time. And listen, whenever I read a romance, it gets good. I cannot stop. No, I'm not going to pick it up tomorrow. I'm just going to be tired in the morning when I get up at 5 o'clock to write, And so I felt like it was a great book for that. And I am always a lover of characters, and I just love the way she handled that. And so there were so many things about it that just kept my interest, kept me wanting to come back to it. And I was impressed with it. I mean, I can see exactly why you recommend it a lot and why you think it's a great book. And it was very interesting for it to be a story that that can be shared with writers that are really sort of learning the ropes of this genre, because it was nicely laid out, and the cast wasn't so big that you get lost in the sauce, right? It's like it was very contained. And so to look at this story against the others, I thought was just a great sort of combination for us to sort of come towards the end of this year. And again, I enjoyed it. And so, yeah, I think I've said it 50 times. I enjoyed the story. It was a great pick. And I think there was something about, I feel like sometimes in cozy, you lean somewhat into the rom-com funny side. Yes. But here, because of the way she handled the characters and the revelation of details, it sort of was folded into it. So it wasn't like, oh, we got another body, or, we got another clue. What are we going to do about this? Or whatever. Yeah. It wasn't any of that. It was just all almost this seamless sort of experience. And I really want to go back and look and see what reviews it said about it, because I always am fascinated once I finish a story, especially since I was already committed to reading it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely do it again. And I think it was a great demonstration of looking at some of those other creative elements that you may want to play with or that you're curious about in a fun packaging.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily fun, like ha 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 fun, but you're seeing new friends get to know each other in a very interesting circumstances. But it was light enough,
Exactly.
and it kept. And I think I said in one of the episodes, like it didn't drag us along, like, but it did keep us on the hook,
Yeah.
and you wanted to continue, through the process. So I loved it. I loved it.
Good, good. Well, and I think like it's a really good example of, just to your point, how to fold in information without like it being like, then it's like one of those old like noir movies of like, he steps out into the camera and he starts monologuing while everything freezes behind him, and he's like, well, she seemed like a pretty interesting dame, but then I had some more questions that I had to ask, and I had to talk to her about the right. And it's like, without it being quite so like almost like clunky in that way.
Yes.
But where it's very like, it feels so natural. And that's a part of this is a great one for the art of the misdirect for that reason. So when like, one of the best ways to keep that mystery and to still be fully fair play with your readers is to sneak the information in when they don't know they're getting a clue. Right? When that information just kind of like, boop, and it's something that comes up, but it seems normal to the conversation, or like it seems like whatever that thing is, you slide that information in, and then later on, when it becomes relevant or there's a new revelation, all of a sudden the protagonist and your reader are like, huh?
Wait, what was that?
Exactly. And so this is a really good one for that, because the story is so seamlessly about the friends getting to know each other, and that is the case information. But then it also means we don't know, and you mentioned this in one of the episodes, we don't know which information is information, which means we're just squinting at everybody the whole time and like, I don't know about you, and so, like, we're suspicious about everything, which does leave us kind of like on that hook of like, is that something? Is that something? What did they just say? Right? We're just like, ugh.
I'm like, keep pacing. I know it's you. That's right.
And then someone else says something and you're like, oh, I know it's you. It's got you written all over it,
Yeah, just because you said that. I know it was you. So shady, but listen, yes. But this makes us sort of go into the other part, and I sort of talked a little bit about pacing and liking the pacing and feeling as if it wasn't like what you will find in romance, in that, I mean, it's something I know I do deliberately, of giving information and hooking them to where you want them to go to that next chapter, and you want them to do that now. And I think she did a great job of like, nah, she gonna let this thing breathe. And she did what she needed to do in such a way that she could do that. But also part of this, which you wanted to sort of bring in, which was the framing. And we do talk about this a little in a future episode, but I'd love for you to sort of talk about this, because how did I say it in my notes? What did I say? Oh, I said, I love the way how she wrapped the plot, right? And we had the Hannah story, and then we had the Freddie story. And so just talk to us a little bit about the framing that she used in this story.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. This, so I don't want to say too much about it so that I don't spoil some of that fun surprise, but I was not expecting that this was even going to have a framing story. So I opened it up and I read so that the framing story is essentially about two authors in conversation. And so I opened it up and you get an email and I'm like, huh, okay. And then I go to the next page and it's like, okay, I'm reading about this thing. Okay. And then I read the chapter, and at the end of that chapter is another email and I'm like, oh. And then you see the way that the framing story interplays with the story itself, and it adds that little bit of extra bit of drive, honestly, right? Because it's sort of like you're getting this this action and reaction, where you get a chapter and then you get a reaction, and then you see the way that shapes the next chapter, and it's this back and forth that builds alongside the story, where we have as many questions about the framing story as we have about the main story. And that is how you do a framing story and do it really well. I mean, it's quite amazing because, she gives us the framing story, and it's only one half of the conversation. and the story itself is almost like the other half of that conversation. And it's really, the restraint to do that, to say, I am going to give only one half of this conversation and let the story speak for the other half of the conversation. Trusting, and this of course went through extensive revision and talks with an editor to make sure that it worked, but that requires a measure of precision and specificity to say, I'm going to leave a certain amount unsaid and use these conversational bookends to give you that information. It gives it way more drive than if we had both parties talking and then the story and then, and I think that's one of those things that you probably only kind of figure out by, she may have drafts of Hannah's side of the conversation, and then they decided, oh, we can pull this out, right? I have no idea. But this is, I don't see framing stories super, super often. I mean, they're not uncommon, right? We see framing stories in movies and novels all the time. But her real consistency with using this framing device and, really holding herself accountable to every single chapter, we are getting something from that framing story, so that it has to rise and fall with the main story, makes it so that they have mutual drive. And it only makes the story that much more engaging and makes us like that much more kind of like intrigued, because now, like I said, we have questions both about the framing story and about the main story. And that's it's one of my favorite things about this book is the use of the framing story.
It makes me, and we're not going to go into it, but it does make me think about how, like as a writer, you can think, oh my gosh, I just have this one good story idea, right? I don't have nothing else. I don't have a book two. I don't have another idea. And how it could be so much pressure to create something so amazing like this. And then what do you do in your next book? Tell a regular story?
Yeah.
Like, so one day, if I ever get to interview her, that's what I'm gonna have to ask. But yes, I totally agree. I think it made it very interesting. I think the way she rose the stakes in the frame was a really great play. And let me tell you, I was given all the shady eye, you were looking real suspect looks on my end, because it was. And I think, again, it goes back to that pacing. So let's transition just a little bit. It's something that we talk about that is also a very, plays a crucial part in this story, which is how she uses characters and how she uses secrets and withholding information. And we talk about this quite a bit, both in the plot as well as in the characters episode, about how information is sort of divulged and it's sort of folded into their interactions as they're growing as friends. And I think what we'll start seeing in this story is being intentional about how that information is dripped out and how it's delivered. And a lot of it is delivered, like you said earlier, in a way that you don't even realize you're getting it.
Yeah.
Until it's relevant. And in that moment, it does feel relevant for what it's shown as. Yeah, this sounds like encrypted. I'm sorry. Read the book. And the moment when you hear it, it's like, oh, okay, that's a good piece of information. But then later it's like, oh, that's what that was. Yeah. And I always call them like little Easter eggs. I love when that happens. That will get me every time, because I think it is just always so clever, and it's a way, like a nod to the author, like, I see you, that you did not come to play. And so we see that like across the story, all the way through as it's sort of unfolding. And the more we get deeper into the story, the more those little half-truths and decisions to not disclose specific details rise to the surface and carry a bigger weight. And it was done in such a tasteful manner, and it was done enveloped in friendship, which makes it feel so a little bit icky, right? Because now you don't trust anybody. Listen, But it was done so well. And I think it's a great way to just keep our attention. Like when you see people doing those card games, like watch the car, or car, any car, like, follow the car. And all of a sudden they flip it over and it's not it. That's what it felt like. I don't know what that game is, y'all. So if you do know, let your girl. Yes, okay, something. Yeah. Listen. But that's the way it felt. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on, how that's used here, or at least how we will encounter it in the story, and what makes this, whether it's a special case, a unique case, or just a really great demonstration of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of Easter egg experience is really, I think, when you're doing a crime story, the experience you want to create. Like, that's really what you're aiming for. It's like you're hiding things in plain sight. And especially, again, with crime, you can get away with the nature of the crime, and sometimes like the political hangups of, whether you're in journalism, working on the force, what it's like to be a lawyer. You can work some of that, and that can provide some of that drive. But really, you're still providing clues, and you're still giving information. And ideally, when we don't always know that we're getting information, right? But in murder mystery, again, because it's so puzzle centric, that's the experience that readers are looking for. Is the Easter egg experience of like, oh, and you like look back at some other part of the book and you're like, that's what that was. And it really, I mentioned this in a different episode, but it feels like a dopamine hit almost, like where it's like you just made a connection. It basically is, because you've made a new connection. And so what you're looking to do, and what this story does, is pace that out. And you kind of got to say, okay, what's the first layer of information for Act 1? What is the next layer of that information? Whether it's the same information or new information. And you're like peeling back. So as it's almost like when you do your Act 1, 2, 3, and 4, each act you're peeling back a deeper and deeper layer until you get to the bottom of the thing. And this story does it so well, especially because we're framed inside of getting to know new friends. And so what are they going to talk about? Well, first they're going to talk about light stuff, obvious stuff. What do you do? How did you get here? And then as they get to know each other, you get a little bit more of that. And then as they get to know each other, you get a little bit more, and you're like, oh, why didn't you mention that? Feels like that should have come up sooner. But then it's like, well, maybe it shouldn't have, because we were still kind of strangers, right? And then you don't know what to your point. It's sowing mistrust. And you're like, I don't know what to think. I know. And then it keeps you reading forward, because now you're craving information, right? So when you give the reader information that is grabbing their interest, and it's making them think one way about the crime, or they feel like, oh, that's it, that piece of information feels like it's relevant, and it makes them want more. So then they keep reading because they want more information, and then they want more information. And that's how you keep them moving. It's like that's what you're sort of wheeling and dealing with. It's like if you think about the shell game, they're trying to find that daggone shell, and then when you lift up the cup, they're like, it's not there. Why isn't it there? And then they have more questions, and that's how you keep that drive in a story. And this does that really well by pacing it out. And again, when I'm working with crime clients, I'm thinking about information in layers, and that helps you when you're looking at the 4-act structure. It can help you determine what information belongs in which act. What order does my investigation, or like what order does that information need to get revealed in, according to what act we're in. And that's how I'll sort of like frame that for crime writers, especially because that's really the primary way that we're working our stakes, minus if we have the threat getting closer, more bodies, or anything like that as well.
This reminds me of a concept, y'all. I may be totally attributing it to the wrong person. This is what happens when you've been around for a really long time and your brain is tired because you've been podcasting all day. So just go ahead and extend grace to your girl. But I believe it's James Bell Scott, where he talks about like broad squeeze spill, right? Of like, as you're moving through those acts, it is very broad. And the reason why it is acceptable here is because the relationship is new. right? And the murder that sort of kicks this all off is what incites this new relationship.
Yep.
And it sort of, the more that we get in, it sort of squeezes in, and that means you get deeper, but you also get more and more specific as in you come in, and then it spills you into the next act. And then now you have a new set of circumstances in which now we're playing at. And the broad is still broad when we spill into that next act, but it's not as broad as it was because the circumstances as well as the dynamic of those relationships have changed.
Yeah.
And so using that and sort of, allowing your mind, because they sort of start circling some of the similar or same scenarios, but the more that you start pulling in, knowing them better, and then getting more specific about the details of those moments, the more they take on a different shape. And it goes from, oh yeah, you're so cool, to I'm gonna keep one eye on you and one eye on the door. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think that is so amazing. And we also see that in a sense of this sort of just shows us clearly of how we then get to engage the characters, because all of this is happening while they're getting to know each other and we're getting to know them. And because it's first person present tense, she is getting to know them. And it makes for this thing of like, she's accepting the information and you're accepting the information. But as you go along more and more, you're like, I don't know. And she even says a couple of times, like, I don't know if it's just because as a writer, I view it like this, or that I should be a little bit, but I'm going to go with. And I loved those little like mini like check-ins of like, this looks suspicious. And maybe if I wasn't X, Y, and Z or away from home, feeling this dude, blah, 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 I would respond differently. But because of that, this is what I'm going with. And so with that said, like when we are thinking about the characters here and as we move forward, are there any elements or things that you think is kind of rises to the top? I know we talk about them a lot here, but I think when you consider the fact that we've talked about the continuum, we sort of talk about like where the story falls. And I think the more that you're in this middle ground over to cozy, it leans a lot more towards the interpersonal relationships and relationships in general versus leaning more into the details of the crime, the details of the scene, and all of that. And so I feel like the characters are sort of carrying this on this sort of floating carpet, if you will, of the murder mystery. So are there any things that you like to say about those characters that we sort of are going to like expand upon over the next couple of episodes? Or more than what we said?
I don't want to say, like, I don't want to go too much on this topic because, I mean, you literally can't talk about this story without talking about the characters because they are the center of the plot. Which one of you did it, right? So you're sort of like, it's impossible to talk about the plot without talking about the characters, and, well, it's impossible to do the characters episode without talking about the characters, so we talk about the characters a lot. But one of the things that I would be considering, so if you've already read the book, or just if you're reading it for the first time and getting ready for the plot episode or whatever, if you're just reading it for the first time, right, again, just enjoy the ride. Just enjoy the experience and come back around, and then, you can noodle on stuff. But one of the things I think to kind of look at is like the spread of the characters, of like how they are contrasts to one another. And this is a good thing to do, when you're writing characters. This is to kind of try to figure out like the spread so that they're not all clustered or being very samey. And so looking at, we have a spread of age. We have a spread of like discipline. So we've got, our Harvard law student, we have our psych student, we have an established author, and we have a new author. And so now we kind of get this different, like,
and social status too. I think that made a difference as well.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you're like looking at, okay, we have characters who we'll say come from different disciplines. And then we have characters who, have different social status. We have an author who had a hit, and we have someone who comes from a wealthy family. And again, we have a new author who got a prestigious fellowship but hasn't written a book yet and is on the line for a stunning debut because, having won this fellowship it's sort of like, we expect great things from you, right? And there's like that pressure on it. And so you then getting to see the way that they navigate like their own sort of position in the world and how that affects their interactions with each other and the way that they see the world and how they're thinking through things, and just even the variety that it gives us of, you know, Wit and Marigold are on the younger side, Kane and Freddie are older, you know, in their late 20s rather than their early 20s, and positioning everybody and seeing how they differ from one another and those contrasts that exist. And that really gives you a way for them to interact so that each character is distinct in their interactions. Mm-hmm. We know when Wit is speaking. We know when Marigold is speaking because they have a way of being that comes across in their dialogue, and you can kind of see that in the story. And so that would be a thing that I would say, you know, pay attention to that. Like how these characters have been made distinct through their differences, and then how they kind of come together also in their similarities, and how they sort of exchange ideas and opinions, and like, you know, Wit introducing everyone to Boston institutions and Marigold knowing about this thing or the other thing, and it just, and how that creates that blend of what feels like really authentic friendship, of like the way that, you know, we are very different from our friends and then we share similarities with our friends, and then those things kind of merge together, right? We're like, there are turns of phrase that you use, Dana, that I used to never use, and now all of a sudden they're a part of my daggone vernacular, like things that I say that are like, that's a Dana-ism, and I, as it's coming out of my mouth, I know that it is, right? And that's like, that's the nature of friendship, and we get to see that kind of play out, and having your characters be very different is really important for that to actually come out on the page. So that's one thing that we haven't mentioned maybe as explicitly across the 3 episodes that I think is kind of nice for framing the conversations that come after.
Mm-hmm. I think that is so important. I know in one of our live writings, I was talking about, you know, great ways of using your resources when you're building characters. Yeah. And how you can use them in the benefit of having a balance. Like a lot of times people look at archetypes thinking like, I just need to have them, and not taking time to think about why you want to have them, and why having that sort of balance or dynamic between the characters helps you to look at the same issue or conflict from a different perspective. So having that also allows you to explore that, whether it's that theme or it's that core issue, using that particular character's lens that's built upon them being from that specific disposition. And it does such a great job, especially if you're in something like romance, or you're in a story where it's where you sort of have a very foundational, like a core theme that you're aiming to hit at, and you can sort of hit that theme from all these different angles, so you get a whole feel for it. And that comes from how you build your character and how you build your cast. And she did such a great job with that. So with that said, as we get ready to sort of come towards the end of this overview, and we prepare to sort of dive into this story, I'm going to ask you if there's anything else you would like to touch on, but I will say to everyone that's listening or watching, what's up?
Hey girl, hey.
How you doing? Right. You've already been here an hour. But if you haven't done so already, you know, you have time to grab the book. As always, our books are usually available in multiple formats, give or take. We try our best to pick books that are easily accessible.
We learned the hard way after The Whistleblower.
Oh my gosh.
We'll never make that mistake again. I apologize. Ever. I'd like to apologize to my friends, to my family, to the viewers and the listeners. I just am so sorry. So we learned the hard way that one time, and I was like, okay, we'll do that better next time.
And it's like in the bees in the back, okay? Yes, we are not going to do that again, okay? But you have time to grab it and read it. As always, the episodes that we have, we aim to not give away spoilers, especially for this. So we're having to talk around this in generalities, but I believe that you're going to come away with some really concrete information. And I think you're going to be armed with some great information when you go back for that second or third read of this book. I would say, though, if you can, read the book first, because then having the I think you'll get a lot from it just hearing us talk about it as normal. But if you read that book and then have this discussion, you have hooks to hang the information on. And that just makes it so much better, I believe, especially for this type of book where there's a lot of things that we can't disclose without giving away the story. So we still have a very engaging conversation, but we just can't talk about a lot of specifics on this one for that reason. And so with that said, before we bounce, is there anything else that you would like to highlight about this story? Or anything?
We covered everything else. And I can say, too, the book is not super long. It's like a 10-hour audiobook. The book itself is like 325. Nope, it's about 250 pages or so. So it's super, like, it's, not a long one. So there's, you can read it pretty quickly. And it's like, it's a light read. Like, it doesn't feel dense. It doesn't feel like you're, like, digging through it. And it's very, like, it's just very, very straightforward, and it's just a nice read. So, we talk a lot about this book over the next 3 weeks, but we have a lot of great conversations, so highly recommend it, and there's a lot to look forward to for our plot, characters, and takeaway episodes.
Awesome. So with that said, y'all, this is October. If you are new around here, don't forget to go back and look at some of our previous episodes because your girls have been rolling and doing their daggone thing. Okay. And we will keep going. We have 3 more episodes where we cover the plot, the characters, as well as our final editor's takes. So stick around for us over the next few weeks as we work our way through this book. You can visit us online at storydeepdive.com. Don't forget to leave a review. Anywhere where you may listen to us, you can leave questions or comments on our website. That'll take you over to where the episodes are. And we would love recommendations because we are, at the time of this recording, preparing our 2026 reading list. So if you have something that you want to read, y'all, because y'all know your girl gonna bring the chandeliers swinging.
I'm already bracing myself.
Rachel can take the heat. So
what
we're
did I
prepared.
just say about summer and hiding where the air conditioning is?
I'm not listening to none of that. And so we're preparing our part 2026 reads. And I would say in closing that this is a great way to balance some of our previous reads, some of our previous Rachel picks. I think we are showing like the balance between our reading selections, especially when we talk about what's coming up next month as we close out the year. And I think this is a great addition, especially if you're someone that knows that you want to write this kind of story, but you're not quite sure what sub niche. You know this is your niche or this is your genre, but you haven't just quite nailed down the type of feel, because that's another thing about that continuum, tone that you want to kind of cop a squat in. And I think this is another great option of like, do you want to go with, PNR sort of style? Do you want to go with the investigative journalist sort of style, and figure out where you fall in that. And this makes for a great addition to your TBR list. So with that said, we are out. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in the next episode. And as always, take care and happy writing. Goodbye.